Hello my friends, and welcome to the second installment of my comprehensive Mesmer guide. Or should I say, Chonomancer guide. It's been several years since my last video, and I spent a portion of that time away from the game. However, Heart of Thorns has brought about some fantastic changes to the class and to the game that had me very interested again. Since so much has changed, and since I'm constantly getting requests to update, I figured the time was right. This first installment will cover the basics, including the differences between clones and phantasms, as well as an overview of each weapon, including the new weapon Mesmers get to use, shields. This video is going to be extremely long, so I'm going to put links in the description, allowing you to click around to your favorite parts. In full disclosure, while I am playing the new content in the expansion, I'm still working my way through it, so this guide is not going to incorporate all of the places in the new content where you can do tips and tricks. I actually haven't uncovered most of that yet myself. I'll also be covering World vs. World and general PvE leveling. However, my favorite game mode is PvP. With the advent of the PvP reward system, I'm able to actually make progress that I couldn't before, which I find very exciting. If you're new to me or my videos, then welcome. I'm excited to share with you one of the most unique, nuanced, and fun classes, known as professions, that I've ever had the pleasure of playing. So sit back, get yourself a drink, and allow yourself to dive into my mind for a little while. I hope you like what you see. The first thing we need to discuss, as before, is what is a Mesmer. On the surface, the Mesmer is a wizard class that uses their abilities to confuse their enemies and wreak havoc and chaos. It's one of the few classes in any MMO game that can actually fool your opponent, and you often find yourself having more information about the battle than they do, which gives you distinct advantages. Mesmers summon different kinds of illusions, which are able to affect the battle in different ways, and they are integral to the Mesmer gameplay. Illusions can then be shattered for added effects. The basic gameplay of a Mesmer, then, is managing your illusions properly and using them in an effective way, while also staying out of danger, as you are a light armor class and can be killed relatively quickly. With that being said, let's move into the basics, starting with illusions. The first type of illusion I'd like to discuss are called clones. This is what clones look like. You'll notice that they have my name, my guild name, my title, and all of my armor. To the casual passerby, there's no way to actually distinguish me from my clones. The only way to distinguish is actually to watch how I move. I'm able to move independently, and my clones are bound to simply attacking the target that I had when they were summoned. Another thing you're probably noticing as you watch this is that these clones are doing almost no damage whatsoever. In fact, when you level up, you'll notice that your clones might not do any damage. It might show a 0. That's pretty normal, so don't get too worried about that. So you might ask yourself, okay, well, why do we even bother with this thing that doesn't do any damage? One of the things is that in PvP, this is often a very good tool for confusing your enemies. Mesmers have some stealth abilities, and they have some other abilities as well that will make it easy for your opponent to get fooled and attack a clone instead of you. This is also possible in PvE as well. Mobs will often attack your clones, and that's a hit that you don't have to take, which is really nice. In addition, clones are illusions. They're one of the two kinds of illusions. And illusions fuel your shatters, which are these F1 through F4 keys down here. Now, one thing to notice is that this indicator shows us that we have 2 illusions. We can actually have up to 3. So I have 2 out of 3 right now. And in addition to that, we're only going to focus on this one shatter here called Mind Rack. So Mind Rack, what it does is it destroys all of your clones and your phantasms. We'll get into phantasms in a minute. And it does damage to nearby foes. The shatter effect also does occur at your location, so you effectively count as one of your clones or illusions for the purposes of your shatters. Now, if I do that, what's going to happen is you'll notice that with 1 illusion there's some damage, with 2 illusions there's even more, 3 illusions even more. So the more illusions you shatter, the bigger the effect. But if I hit the button, they'll run in and explode, and you'll see that they actually did some damage there, which is very nice. So let's just go ahead and summon a couple more, and then I'll summon a third. So now I have 3 clones, and what I'm going to go ahead and do is run up to this target golem and shatter, and with a little help from my friend here, the target golem goes down. Another type of illusion that Mesmers have access to are called phantasms. This is a phantasm. It's called the Illusionary Berserker. Now, just like a clone, it's actually going to attack this target golem until it dies, or until the target golem dies. Now, one thing to note right away that's a big distinction between the two is that the phantasm is actually ghostly purple and doesn't look exactly like my character for that reason. It also has its own name. It's called the Illusionary Berserker. That's this particular phantasm. Every phantasm has its own name. Another thing to note is that phantasms actually do damage, and they are a source of Mesmer DPS. Phantasms count as illusions, so you can see down here that I have one illusion available. And in addition, they actually shatter just like clones do. So if I have clones and phantasms up, and I shatter, all of them shatter at the same time. Now, there is no distinction between a phantasm being shattered and a clone being shattered. They all count as illusions, and the number of illusions matters, not the type of illusion. So for example, if I have a clone and a phantasm, and I make a shatter, they all do the same type of damage. Another interesting thing about clones and phantasms is what happens if you have lots of clones up, like a full bar of clones like this, and you summon a phantasm, or you summon another clone for that matter. Well, there is a priority to this, in that if you summon a phantasm, it will always wipe away a clone, sort of like this. So now I have two clones and one phantasm. And if you summon a clone, it will only ever wipe away another clone. So that clone only ever wipes away clones that are up. It never wipes away a phantasm. So really the idea here is that phantasms can wipe away clones, but not vice versa. You can actually have multiple phantasms on a target at the same time. Now that's actually going to be quite quick because that was a low health golem, but you saw here that there were two berserkers. So technically you could have three phantasms up at the same time. If you tried to summon a clone at that point, you actually wouldn't be able to. The clone would not summon. Now conversely, if you had three clones and a phantasm was trying to be summoned like I just did, that works no problem. It's a pretty good feature because it prevents the very damage dealing phantasms from just disappearing off the battlefield. Now that we've discussed the basics, let's get into the different weapons that the Mesmer can use. The first weapon I'd like to discuss is the one-handed sword. So this is actually just known as the sword in this game. The two-handed sword is known as a Greatsword. So the sword's number one attack here is a chain, and what that means is that when you land the first attack, it makes the second attack available. When you land the second attack, it makes the third attack available, and it goes back to the first. So for all these intents and purposes here, Mind Slash and Mind Gash are actually exactly the same. So what they do is they do damage, they inflict vulnerability, which means that your target actually takes extra damage, and it can happen in an arc that will hit 3 targets. So the third ability here, Mind Spike, it actually rips a boon off of your opponent, so it takes one of their buffs away, and then it does additional damage if they have no boons. So I'm just going to walk up here and do some auto attacking. You can see down here that the bar is switching between the 3. So it's Mind Spike and then the other 2 whose names I forget. But you can actually see as I mouse over, the skill is actually changing as the chain continues. Now, I don't have to do anything for this to happen. These arrows around the number 1 key here indicate that this is actually on autocast. So if I turn it off, and you can turn it off by control right-clicking any skill, you can toggle it on and off. If I do that, if I turn it off and then attack this target golem here, it makes this Mind Gash available, and then I can push the button and get Mind Spike, and then essentially manually do this. Now, if I am in the middle of the chain and I run away, or don't do anything, it'll revert back to the beginning after a second or 2. I highly recommend just keeping it on, to be perfectly honest. It's much nicer, so that way if I come out of melee range and then move back into melee range, my character will auto-attack anyway. I don't actually have to keep hitting the button, which is really nice. And basically all I need to do is get in and out of melee range as I need, and it will continue to happen. So just know that you can do this. I don't recommend doing anything different than leaving it on your number 1 skill though. Number 2 here is called Blurred Frenzy. So Blurred Frenzy is, it's known as an animation lock. Really what that means is that when I do it, I'm not actually able to do anything else. My character has to Blurred Frenzy until Blurred Frenzy is over. So what does it do? It strikes your foe a bunch of times, and then distorts the space around you, making you evade attacks. So it gives you this buff. It says Blur here, and Blur makes you evade all attacks. It actually means you're invulnerable. You can't be hurt. If you have conditions like damage over time, those will still continue to damage you, but anything new will prevent you from taking damage. You won't get hit. So I'm going to go ahead and do that here. So you can see it did some decent damage, and during that time period, my character couldn't move around. It was just doing that animation. And you'll also see, I'll recast it down here, you'll see that the buff comes on that shows you what blur is. So there, blur, evade all attacks. Now I turned autocast off to distinguish blurred frenzy from my auto attacking, but if I turn auto attack back on, it'll continue to happen. So essentially the way that blur plays is, if your blurred frenzy plays, that if you're in melee range like this, then your character will just continue to attack as you move forward. So Blurred Frenzy is a really interesting ability because evading all attacks doesn't really need to be used strictly offensively. Actually, if there's a big hit coming and you know what's about to happen, Blurred Frenzy can save your life. And this begins this concept that Mesmers have of sort of bad for you, good for me. So that's really a big mantra about Mesmers, is that if I do something, it's often going to have a negative effect on my opponents while simultaneously having a positive effect for me or my allies. So in this case, negative effect is I'm doing you damage. Positive effect is I'm evading all attacks, which is really nice. So let's go ahead and talk about number 3 here. Number 3 is Illusionary Leap. Now, it's not a chain, but it does have 2 elements to it, you can see. So the first one is a clone. You can see it's going to actually summon a clone for us here. So it summons a clone or an illusion that leaps at our target, crippling them. And then after the initial leap, the clone starts the Mind Slash sword chain. So it starts doing Mind Slash. So actually, it's pretty nice. It'll put some vulnerability on your target, and it will also end up ripping a boon off every now and again from your opponent if you're lucky. Now, you'll also see here that this other thing called swap. So swap places, it lets you swap places with your clone and immobilize nearby foes. So swap actually allows you to teleport to where your clone is and then immobilize things in an area around it. This is really helpful, especially because it allows you to immobilize your target so that you can Blurred Frenzy it, and you can actually end up Blurred Frenzying right away. Swap is also known as a combo finisher leap, so we're going to get into that in just a second. Just want to show you what it looks like first. So here's what it looks like. I'm going to go ahead and hit the button, and it summoned a clone behind the target. And if I push the button quickly, you'll see that an immobilize happened, and I swapped places with my clone. So I'm just going to shatter that clone away, and we're going to try that one more time. I'm going to push the button, I'm going to push it again, teleport to the target, and now my clone is standing where I was, so it had to catch up. But basically, this is a gap closer. Now, it can actually be very useful in certain situations. You know, even if I'm out of line of sight, I can still teleport to the target. And as I mentioned before, one of the cool things about this is that I can actually Blurred Frenzy right away. So if I hit the button and hit it again and then hit 2, I can actually get the Blurred Frenzy off before my opponent is able to come out of the immobilize. So that's a nice inward synergy with the sword as well. One other thing with the sword, as we mentioned here, is that swap, I'm still in combat so we can't see it, but swap is actually a combo finisher leap. So this game has a couple interesting things called combo fields and then combo finishers. So we're going to talk about my skills later, but null field is a combo field ethereal. That's one of the most common combo fields that Mesmers have access to. So combo fields are these, this is called a targeting reticle. That's what this circle is. And basically null field puts down a thingy that does some stuff. We don't need to worry about what the stuff is, but basically anything in this field is able to be comboed. So if I walk into the field and then do Illusionary Leap, I get an added effect. So in this case, I'm able to gain Chaos Armor, and my clone gained Chaos Armor as well. Now, Chaos Armor we'll talk about in a little bit. It's not important to know right now. Just understand that if you put down a combo field of some kind and you leap while you're in the combo field, you'll get an added benefit. If you're in a fire field, sometimes you'll get a fire shield, and there's a bunch of other types of combo finishers as well. You can look them all up. But one of the inward synergies is that Mesmers do have the leap ability attached to this particular weapon, which gives you the ability to give yourself Chaos Armor, as I just did. Overall, I think the sword is a really powerful weapon. I think it's very good for getting in your opponent's face. It's really supposed to be a power build weapon. So you can see here I've got power, precision, and ferocity as my current equipped build on this particular character, and that's why. It's really because power, precision, and ferocity are good for using the sword. You can see I've done some very good damage against the heavy golem. I would say it's probably an A-. It has a lot of good use. It's not usable in every situation, and it's really very, very good for a high burst damage power build that's going to go after sort of shattering a lot of clones and phantasms quickly while you zap in and Blurred Frenzy your opponents. The next weapon we're going to discuss is the other one-handed weapon that Mesmers have access to, which is called the Scepter. Now, for this particular demonstration, I'm going to use a condition damage based build because the Scepter is actually a condition damage weapon. So the first attack here is exactly the same principle as the sword in that it actually is a chain. So it does Ether Bolt, then Ether Blast, then Ether Clone. Now you'll notice that it doesn't do very much damage, but what it does do is it applies Torment. So Ether Bolt applies a small Torment, Ether Blast applies a little bit of a bigger Torment, and these do damage to the target, extra damage if the target happens to be moving. Torment is really, really good in PvP because people are constantly moving, and most people aren't good enough to stop moving when they get Torment, so it's fun to watch them run around and die. And in PvE, it's okay. It sometimes can be good. You just have to kite well. If you're kiting well, then Torment can be just as good as it is in PvP. You'll notice here that the third hit, Ether Clone, shoots out a bolt of energy and actually summons a clone that casts Ether Bolt itself. So with auto cast on here, every third hit, basically, I'm going to summon up a clone. Now, I know I mentioned that clones generally don't deal damage, but what you will notice is that this Torment here, this stack is actually going up with the amount of clones that I have, and each clone is actually adding extra Torment stacks, which means that the clones are dealing damage. Now you'll notice here, because I'm constantly summoning them, the clones are overwriting themselves. So one of the things about the Scepter is that you have to be aware of that. It's often good to shatter before you end up summoning an extra clone. So really the way that works is if I summon, this is number 2 here, so 1, 2, and then number 3, and then we do 1, 2, shatter, and then number 4 comes up. So that's kind of how that works. You just want to try to shatter efficiently so you're not wiping clones away. Again, if you also have phantasms up, these clones will only ever overwrite each other. They won't overwrite the phantasms as well. You'll also notice that both the Scepter and the sword don't actually have phantasm summoners on them. So in any weapon loadout that a Mesmer has, there's access to usually 1 clone and 1 phantasm. It just so happens that all the phantasms come from your offhand. So we'll get into those in just a little bit. The next skill I actually want to talk about isn't number 2, it's number 3. It's called Confusing Images, and it channels a beam of energy that damages and confuses your foe. So it does some decent damage even if you're not in a condition damage build, and it puts confusion on your opponent, which does extra damage if they are, it does decent damage over time, and a little bit of extra damage as well if they use a skill. So similar to how Torment punishes your opponents for moving, Confusion punishes your opponents for doing things. So overall, both very, very good. Now, an interesting thing about this as well, and this is actually a principle about the game in general, is that I have this target golem here targeted. But this target golem, the heavy one, happens to be in my way. So if I start with the channel beam here, it actually goes through both of them, which is pretty cool. Now, another thing you'll notice here is as I start attacking, if I actually get in the way of, if this target golem gets in my way, even though I'm targeting this particular golem, the physical projectile that actually comes out of my character is what matters. So this is very different than other games such as like World of Warcraft, where the thing that you attacked, no matter where you are in the game, it will actually go to that thing. In this game, just like in real life, an actual object in front of your character will block your attacking. So there's a certain physicality to the game that I really like. I think that's really cool. And what you can also see here is that Confusing Images did a very significant amount of damage to the target, and it puts a lot of condition damage on as well, which is really cool. So we have 2 skills here that are dealing good condition damage. Now, in addition, we've got this other skill here, and we kind of need Spawn here in order to sort of really talk about it. So this skill here is called Illusionary Counter. Now, what it does, it's actually a clone ability as well, and what it does is it lets you block the next attack, and then if you do successfully block that attack, you counter by applying Torment and creating a clone that starts casting Ether Bolt. Now, you'll notice here that the Torment is a 5-stack, and over 8 seconds it'll deal 3,300 damage, or 6,700 if the target's moving. So this is actually really, really good, especially in PvP. If you can block a really powerful attack from your opponent, often they're going to get really confused as to why they're dying so quickly. Now, if you're not actually going to be attacked, then what you can do is you can actually push the button again before the cast is over, and you'll counterspell, which blinds your opponent. So if you push the button like this, and then push it before the cast ends, you'll counterspell. But I'll kind of show you what this looks like with regards to Svanir. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to summon up a couple clones using mirror images, and then I'm going to run in first and go ahead and block his first attack. You can see that he's got a 5-stack of Torment, and what I'm going to do here is allow my clones to tank, and essentially I'm going to use number 3 here to give him confusion, and basically as he comes up to me I'm going to block him and then dodge away, and he gets very confused as to what he should attack. Now he's a pretty dangerous opponent in general, but you can see how the clones kind of distract him away from hitting the true target, which is really me. Now if he does end up coming near me, I can block and actually end up dealing some damage. Now you do have to be careful, especially because the block only blocks 1 attack, it doesn't block 2. So if he does multiple attacks in 1 hit, he does that multiple swipe type of thing, you may end up actually only blocking the first hit. That's actually what happened to me just there as well. But if I block the first hit and then dodge away from him, he gets the Torment stacks and he actually goes down. So you can see here, Mesmers are able to solo some very powerful monsters in the game, even just by virtue of their own, just like the individual weapons there. Now you note all I did was dodge roll, and that's what this is basically. If you double tap in any direction, you'll dodge, and if you dodge, you evade attacks and you become invulnerable. So all I did there was use the block ability, use the confusing images ability, use some clones off of my mirror images, and then use the Scepter to kill this pretty powerful mom. Chieftain's a little bit harder to do because he does ranged, but let's go ahead and give that a shot as well. So let's see, he'll throw something at me, and I can block his throne thing. If I summon a couple guys here, let's see, he's got me immobilized, so now I have to heal. And basically what I want to do is use confusing images on him, and if he gets near me, I'm going to block. See, I can block his main attack, and essentially just kite him away. So I'm running away from him, and hopefully not allowing him to hit me. Now hopefully I'll have this block up. Now you see I thought he was going to come to me, so I used the blind ability there because he didn't actually end up connecting. And again, it's really helpful to have these clones as they end up distracting the mob quite a lot from his primary objective, which is killing you. And again, you go ahead and let him block. And he should actually end up going down here without much more of a problem. So even with taking some damage and getting immobilized, I'm able to kill some pretty powerful monsters with the Scepter alone. Now I will say, in full candor, I did not give the Scepter a good enough shake, and maybe it wasn't a good enough weapon when I first started, and when I first made my first guide. I would say the Scepter's a solid A now if you know how to use it. You must know how to block effectively with Illusionary Counter, meaning not blocking your opponent's pets in PvP, and waiting for your opponent to do some big attack. But if you can use it effectively, it is a really, really high damage weapon, and specifically for conditions. So if you want to go the condition route, the Scepter is one of your best options. The first offhander I'd like to discuss is the Torch. Now the Torch gives you access to the number 4 and 5 abilities. You can see I don't have a one-hander equipped right now. So the Torch, like any other Mesmer offhand, does have a phantasm. So let's go into that first. So this is called the Phantasmal Mage. And what it does is it basically, it's over here, what it does is it basically shoots a purple ball. So this one is called Illusionary Mage. And this purple ball bounces between targets. You can see here, it's actually bouncing between 2 target golems. And then it just hit me as well. So let's look at this. What it does is it does burning for 6 seconds on 2 targets. And you can see both targets are burning. And what it also does is it bounces between allies and provides fury to those allies. So based on the configuration of how you're standing, the ball will bounce to the closest thing. So if I move away, it's actually trying to get to this light golem and then dissipates about here. If I manage to stand about here, I'll be able to potentially absorb it. I was absorbing it before if we go over this way. So we'll see here. And now that golem's dead. This one having a little more health will die in just a moment. So this is, again, this idea of bad for you, good for me, such that I'm burning you and giving Fury, which adds 20% critical strike to my opponent. So it has 3 bounces here. You can summon multiple of them, which is pretty cool. So if I have a few of them up, they actually consistently will burn my target. As I'm sure you're guessing here, this is quite a good ability. Now it actually gave itself Fury, which is interesting. You saw it kind of go in a 4 square type of thing here, see? And if you're in a heavy condition damage build, it actually does some good damage here. So I'm going to summon a second one so you can kind of get a sense as to what it looks like. It is on a pretty long cooldown, so 30 seconds is a pretty long time. And it is kind of difficult to get multiple up here. You can see these guys are almost all dead. But you can see here now with the double stack, it's dealing even more. So pretty cool stuff. And I really like this Phantasm for its purpose of this dual nature, again, bad for you, good for me, of this bouncing projectile. So the other skill here is the Prestige. It lets you disappear, so this is a stealth ability, makes you totally invisible. When you do disappear, you blind your opponents, and then when you reappear, you burn them. So the torch is a burning weapon, which kind of makes sense. And basically it looks like this. So if I run up to the target and blind them here like that, then when I reappear, I burn them, and they take some extra damage. So it's all about the burning. One additional thing here about the Prestige is that it actually is a combo finisher blast. Combo finisher blast means that if you're inside of a combo field, that combo field will, you'll usually do the effect to multiple targets. In this particular case, you give Chaos Armor to multiple targets. So what I'll do here is go ahead and put the field down. Now you have to be pretty good about this in getting the field down and then waiting the 3 seconds. But you'll see here that I do gain Chaos Armor before the field dissipates. I think the Prestige is really cool. It used to be very bad because you used to have to channel the stealth, which means that if you did anything else, you'd lose your stealth. Now what this allows you to do is it allows you to stealth and then heal, which you'll remain stealth during that duration. What it also allows you to do, which is very helpful, is stealth and then start doing something big, like summoning some other phantasm or summoning another phantasmal mage. So overall, I think that the torch is a very good weapon. It's a B+ weapon. It's not going to be used all the time, but it is good if you want to be sneaky, and it's very good if you want to do condition damage with the burning from the phantasm and the burning from the weapon itself. The next type of offhanded weapon I want to show you is the one-handed sword, actually in the offhand. So you can actually have a one-handed sword in the main hand and in the offhand. They do entirely different things. So let's look at the Phantasm first. This is a power weapon, so the Phantasmal Swordsman really benefits from power. Now you can see it does damage. Basically it hops in, does a strike, and then jumps away to safety. You can also see that it is a combo finisher leap, so actually if I put that down there, it can give itself Chaos Armor, which is kind of cool. The Phantasm itself does quite a lot of damage as well. It's a pretty strong Phantasm overall. And so 1800 on a non-crit, and probably something like 3600 or so on a crit. Very, very strong Phantasm. And the nice thing about it as well is that it jumps at something and then removes itself from combat and brings itself back to safety. So we've got this guy here trying to attack our stuff. So let's just go ahead and move away from it. Additionally, the sword has a very similar ability to the Scepter's blocking. This is known as Illusionary Riposte. So basically, it's block for you block your foe, and when you do, you create an illusion and do some damage. Now, if you don't end up getting blocked, you can do this idea called Counterblade, where you basically, during the cast, right before it ends, push the button one more time and it does a daze. This is something that actually only occurs if you are not blocked at all. So I'm going to go ahead and try this. I'm not going to be able to kill the chieftain because they don't have a main-handed weapon, but I should be able to block his attack at least. So you can see that I've done some damage here, and now the chieftain's going to wreck me, so I just need to leave. But basically, this is a good skill. It's not as good as the Scepter's version of this skill. And the real reason why it's not as good is because it doesn't, the counter attack doesn't do anywhere near as much damage. I'm in a full power build here, and it only does about 1500. So it's fine. It accomplishes a similar thing, It's just that the counter damage is not really all that high. Overall, I think that as an offhand, there are some better options for you. I think that the sword it's a high DPS weapon and it's good for burst. I think it is probably outshined by another weapon that we'll go over next, which is the pistol. So oddly, the number 5 key has been the thing that summons phantasms on your offhand for both the torch and for the offhanded sword, but for this particular weapon, it happens to be on number 4. I don't really understand that. I just kind of wish the game designers put the phantasms all on the same button, regardless of your loadout. That way you'd be, confident that you'd always have the phantasm. So it's a little annoying, but here you go. I'm gonna go ahead and summon this up. Now, this is an interesting phantasm in that it's ranged. You can see here that basically it unleashes a flurry of bullet strikes here, and what I'll go ahead and do is show you. It does about 8 damage, 8 attacks, and about 2,000 damage. Each attack can particular crit, as well as being a physical projectile combo finisher. So the tenet of that is that if they are within a combo field here like this, when it attacks, it could potentially add confusion onto the target. There's a 20% chance. So it's nice. It's not really why you summon up this particular phantasm. But if you have multiple of them up, the nice thing about them is that they stay far away and they unleash a lot of damage onto your opponents with a relatively little cost for doing so. It's only on a 20-second cooldown, so it's a little bit of a faster summon. And the pistol's also really fun because of this item here, Magic Bullet, number 5, which hits up to 4 foes with a single shot. The first one gets stunned, the second is dazed, the third is blinded, the fourth is confused. So really, these guys are too far away, but similarly to how the Phantasmal Mage has a bouncing attack, this should bounce between at least these two. And actually did manage to hit the third, which is great. So this particular one was stunned. The heavy golem was stunned. The second, the medium golem was dazed, and the third was blinded. So this is really great for stopping your opponents from doing things like resurrecting each other in PvP, or in PvE from casting a big powerful spell. It is kind of an AoE. Really the stun is the most important for your primary target, but it is really good for all involved. It's a solid attack for each of the targets involved. An additional benefit, it is also a physical projectile. You'll get 1 stack of confusion from it, so whoop-de-doo. Not really all that exciting. And that's, again, for just an ethereal field. For something like a fire field, the pistol attacks will actually put burning on the target, for example. Overall, I think the pistol is a very good weapon. I think you can use it for power, and you can see here I'm in a power build, and it actually is very strong for that. You can also use it as a condition damage weapon if you take one of the particular skills that Mesmers have access to that allows you to inflict bleeding whenever your illusions critically hit. So whenever they critically hit, they'll apply bleeding, and if you take a high critical hit damage or a high critical hit chance condition damage build, that could potentially be beneficial as well. I think they're pretty cool as well. I just think they're probably the coolest guys in the game, the coolest phantasms. I think the pistol's a solid B, I would imagine. It's got limited use, but its use is pretty good. It's pretty annoying to play against, and it's got great sustained damage. Now the Focus actually has its Phantasm on number 5, unlike the pistol, so the pistol seems to be the outlier. A little weird. But let's go ahead and talk about the Phantasm first. This is it. It's the Phantasmal Warden. And what it does is it actually stays completely stationary and is a melee phantasm that stays right up next to your target. It's really cool because it has an extra ability here of actually evading yourself from projectiles. So if you stand within this bubble, within the phantasm sort of attack while it's attacking, you can't be hit by any projectiles, and neither can the phantasm. So it creates this sort of interesting bubble around you that will protect you from it. You can also see that the damage is pretty high, but the phantasm doesn't really move very well, and it's completely stationary while attacking. So only fools really stand in the damage. Great for PvE, not great for PvP. But one of the cool things about the Focus as well, in addition to having this phantasm, which is a pretty high damage phantasm, one of the highest damage phantasms in the game actually, is its number 4 ability, which is called Temporal Curtain. So I'm going to go ahead and get out of combat so we can see the other side of it. But Temporal Curtain is very interesting because it also has this thing called Into the Void. Now, this has a sort of line-based targeting reticle, and what it really does is, it's again bad for you, good for me. It provides swiftness, which lets you run faster, and if any enemies cross it, it actually gives them cripple. So if I go ahead and just sort of run through it, it makes me run faster, which is really nice. Now, if your friends run through it as well, they will also gain swiftness. So this is a good way to get around while you're leveling up. Which makes things pretty quick. Now it's on a 25-second cooldown, and the swiftness lasts 12 seconds, so it's almost up half the time. So half the time, maybe a little less than that, maybe 40% of the time, you are running a little faster, which is really good. In addition, if you're in a combat situation, you can place it in between you and your enemy like this, and if they walk over it, then they get crippled, which makes them move slower, which is really, really cool. Now, in addition, we have this Into the Void thing, so which only becomes available when the Temporal Curtain is up, and what it does is it shatters it, pulling enemies toward your position. This will also interrupt your enemies, but basically what I can do is I can summon it, get my swiftness, and then push the button again, and it sucks the enemies toward me. Now, these two golems are programmed to not come off of their particular spots, so they'll actually teleport right back, but it's really good for screwing up your opponent, especially if you summon, for example, the Illusionary Warden. And what you can actually do is you can then pull guys into your Illusionary Warden rather than sort of having them run away from it. So I can do that, and then my Illusionary Warden, if it attacks, you know, it will deal damage everywhere. Now you notice actually that little thing that said Cleansing Bolts. The interesting thing is that the Phantasmal Warden's attack is a combo finisher Whirl. Now a combo finisher Whirl shoots bolts in either direction, in every direction. Now the bolts here, you can see them coming off, were Confusion bolts. That's because these are ethereal combo fields. So if I put another ethereal combo field down, well, didn't do it in time, but ethereal combo fields put Confusion bolts out all over the place. This is a combo field light. This is the only combo field light that Mesmers have access to. So if I put it down, it actually does Cleansing bolts instead, and that cures conditions on your friends. So you can get creative with this. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on with the focus. I think it's very hard to use. Mostly you should really be using it to get extra run speed. If you're really good, you can drop the number 4 onto your Phantasmal Wardens and then suck guys into it while also curing conditions. So I think the focus is probably an A- weapon for leveling only. It's really good for leveling because you can get that extra speed boost, get around the map quicker, get stuff done faster. But I think that from a combat perspective, there are better weapons available. This is a particularly hard phantasm to use. If you're stuck using it because you're leveling up, just try to get inside of the area where your phantasm is summoned to help prevent yourself from getting hurt from ranged weaponry while you're attacking. So figure maybe you have a sword in your main hand, so you're attacking a mob, and this warden is attacking the mob as well, and you want to stay in here in this range so that you don't get hit by projectiles as well. And you can drop this combo field right on that guy, get guys closer to you, sort of make all the mobs come to you. Pretty cool. So the other offhand that Mesmers have access to, or technically I guess Chonomancers have access to, is the shield. Now this is something that was added in the expansion, and it's only if you take the elite specialization Chonomancer. So where would that be? So in PvP build world, it's down here. Now in your hero menu, it's over here. So these are the same. I just happen to be in the PvP zone. It's always on the bottom. So here I have access to take all of these different particular types of trait lines, but down here I have Chonomancer available. And one of the first things that Chonomancer does is it allows you to pick up shields. So if you have the expansion, you go into the PvP zone, you can equip a shield right away. If you don't, then you have to hit level 80, get the expansion, then you have to go earn some hero points, and then once you earn hero points, you down here buy Chonomancer and all the related skills. It also unlocks this Shatter, which we'll get into later. One of the nicest things about the shield is it provides the Mesmer the ability to block attacks. So Mesmers don't really, I mean, besides the Scepter and the offhanded sword, which allow you to block 1 attack each. This is a multiple blocking skill. It actually kind of makes you invulnerable during the block. So if I run up here to this guy and I block him, anything that he tries to do is going to remain blocked. Now, you can see here, I actually ended up summoning 2 phantasms. The reason why is because if I actually successfully block something, I'm actually going to run away because all these mobs are respawning. If I actually successfully block something, I'm able to reuse the skill. So you'll see here once I get out of combat, for whatever reason, by the way, when you're in combat, you can't see the other skills. You can only see the active one. But here, Echo of Memory turns into Deja Vu, does the same thing. So if you successfully channel your entire block, it summons a Phantasm. That Phantasm's Shield Bash ability gives what's known as Alacrity, which is a new thing in the expansion that allows skills to recharge quicker. And then also it gives Slow to your opponents, which makes things for them happen slower. You know, they attack slower and use skills slower. So this is what the Phantasm actually looks like, and it's only after a successful cast. Now, you can see here, I wasn't able to use Deja Vu, and that's because I didn't get hit. I didn't end up blocking anything. The other skill is called Tides of Time. Tides of Time is really cool. It launches a wave of energy that does some damage, and it also, essentially, it stuns them and then buffs you. So let's go ahead and do this. It shoots the wall out. The wall turns around and comes right back to you. Now on each pass, when it passes this way and when it passes this way, it will stun the target. It will also, when it passes through you, give you quickness. Now quickness is good. It lets you attack faster. It lets you do things faster. 1.5 seconds of quickness, meh, take it or leave it. The stun is really what's important about this particular skill. The stun is really good, and also the fact that it blocks projectiles or blocks missiles, and it's a combo field itself. So this is a really, really solid weapon overall. I actually think that in PvP, this is one of the strongest weapons that you have access to, because it makes it so that you're so hard to kill. Getting 2 blocking attacks off in a row and then stunning your opponent is really powerful. In PvE, it can be just as good if you're in a particularly difficult situation. The expansion, for example, has a lot of mobs that will kill you if you're not paying attention. And this skill allows you a little bit more flexibility and the ability to not die. So we'll go into a little bit more later about Chonomancer itself, but I think that the shield is a fantastic weapon if you have access to it. I would take it over most of the others, and for that reason I actually give it like an A. It's my favorite offhanded weapon. I think it's phenomenal, and I think that it's underused right now, just because I think Mesmers don't really quite understand how good it is. The next weapon we're going to discuss is the two-handed sword, also known as the Greatsword. So the first ability on the Greatsword isn't a chain. All it does is it actually just shoots a beam at your foe, and just the further away you are, the more damage it deals. So way back here, it deals about 1700 damage or so. So I'm going to turn the autocast off so we can see. So 789 total without critting, and then if I get a couple crits, you know, about 1300. So pretty good. If I'm back a little bit further, you can see that that's actually a little bit more, and as I come in, the damage is lowered. So really the first thing to learn about the Greatsword is that being far away is good. Weirdly, the Greatsword is actually a ranged weapon for Mesmers, and I happen to think that the cast is the coolest looking thing in the game. This is actually why I started playing Mesmers in the first place, was because they shot lightning out of their swords. So, another interesting thing is that if you do have autocast on, and you continuously cast just Spatial Surge, the number is going to continue to rise up, and this can be very confusing because for other MMO players, it feels like each successive hit is a fresh hit. This is a cumulative number, so it's not actually the number that you're seeing is not actually each hit, it's the total of all hits so far. So that's something to notice. Now the number 2 ability here is called Mirror Blade. It does a similar type of bouncing thing as the the Torch's Phantasm, in that it bounces around. Now what this will do is it summons a clone. It bounces around, and any ally it hits, it gives you might. Any enemy it hits, it does damage and adds vulnerability. So I'm trying to get away from a mob so that this guy doesn't attack it, so you can see here. So with autocast off, you can see it bounced between, I got 2 stacks here of might, and it actually summoned a clone up at my target as well. So this is pretty cool. It's good for getting a clone in the area. It does pretty good damage, and it's very cheap to cast, meaning it's like a very fast cast, and it's got pretty good range as well. So it's a good thing to have. It's good to generate some extra clones so that you can start shattering, as I just have here. So I like that skill. Number 3 is Mind Stab. I think it's one of the coolest skills in the game, actually. So Mind Stab is a reticle targeting ability, and if you're moving, it's another animation lock. So when you use it, your character actually stops, and they have to just do the Mind Stab. They're not able to do anything else. So what it does is your character thrusts their sword into the ground, and at the targeted area, the sword shoots out of the ground and does damage. It also removes a boon. So if we go like that, it sort of puts a giant purple sword into the feet of the target that you're looking at. So pretty cool skill, very nice for getting extra boons off, and it does some good damage in AoE. It's really difficult to use this correctly though, because you do have to stay still while it's happening. Only for just a second, but that second could matter. Additionally, we've seen the Phantasmal Berserker before. So it skates around and does a whirlwind style attack. The nice thing about this is it also cripples your target. So this being a weapon that you want to be far away with, the cripple is very, very helpful in keeping your enemies far away from you. So one of the most devastating things a Mesmer can do is summon this phantasm and hit you before you even know what's going on. That way you'll just be crippled and standing there completely helpless while the Mesmer sort of has their way with you. Now this final ability here is Illusionary Wave. Basically, this is a knockback, and it's really just to keep the gap, pretty high between you and your target. So it just shoots a wave of force out, knocks things away. Now, again, these target golems sort of shoot back to where they should be, but if something does end up closing with you, you can shoot stuff back. The Greatsword obviously is a power-based weapon. There isn't really any condition damage on this weapon at all, and it is a very good power-based weapon. Its phantasms do a lot of damage, and you'll actually end up seeing Mesmers who are in a heavy power shatter type build using the Greatsword to very good effect, to even great effect, as it were. Sorry for the pun. Anyway, I think that this weapon is probably between the B+ and A- range, depending on what type of build you want to have. It's certainly A+ in a power build that can really take advantage of it. As a weapon itself, it's probably going to be a great weapon to level with as well, if you're leveling with power. It's just got a nice wide range of skills, and an interesting thing about Spatial Surge is that it does penetrate in exactly the same way as the number 3 from the Scepter does, so you can actually hit multiple targets with it as well. So I can actually sort of move the beam in and out of multiple targets here and still damage everything. So that's pretty cool, something that we really like to see. The final weapon we're going to discuss, you might recall if you've seen my other video, is the Staff, which is my favorite weapon, and it's still my favorite weapon. So I believe that this is a condition damage weapon, and the reason why is because of the autocast ability here, Winds of Chaos. So you can see I'm casting it here, and what it does is it throws a ball that sort of does the same bouncing thing that the Phantasmal Mage does, in that it bounces between enemies and also allies. So if I get close, it'll start bouncing off of me instead of the enemy here. And what it does is it provides bleeding, burning, or vulnerability on the target, so it does some sort of condition, 2 of which do damage. And what it also does is it provides fury and might to me, meaning that I will end up doing more damage myself. Now the interesting thing is that when you have clones, they will actually do this ability as well. So if I have a bunch of clones up, you can see this is actually pretty good in terms of how much damage they can do. The Staff clones are actually the highest DPS clones in the game. Even the Scepter clones can't come close to it. So the Staff clones are very strong, and it's worth having them. I think that it's very, very good to have them available. Now, speaking of Staff clones, you've seen me use this a couple times now. This is called Phase Retreat. It's a clone summoner, and what it does is it lets you teleport away from your target and summons a clone. It's also a combo finisher leap, so you'll see here I can give myself Chaos Armor out of it, and it puts a clone where I was. Additionally, this actually will let you get out of a stun, so if you are stunned, you can leap out of it. So Phase Retreat is very, very good. It's a really nice skill to have, and I think that it's something I cast a lot. Now, you can get real fancy with Phase Retreat if you're pretty good, You'll see me do this occasionally. So if I'm running in this direction and I want to go faster in this direction, you can actually turn around, right? Turn around like this, phase retreat, and then turn around again. So we'll see if I can do that correctly. It's kind of hard to do in this game. Unlike WoW, it doesn't quite let you turn around as quick. But if you turn around like that and then keep going, I find it easier to jump and do it. Then you can actually teleport forward in kind of a little bit of a hacky way. So you can basically turn around and teleport. Again, pretty tough to do, but not such a bad thing to know about, just if you want to get real fancy. Just know that you're going to go backwards, so make sure that whatever you're going to go backwards into is free and clear. The number 3 Phantasm here, the number 3 is the Phantasm, and what it does is it puts damage on the target based on how many conditions it has. So essentially, if I just turn off autocast and we watch it attack, it doesn't do very much damage, actually, not very much at all. Now, I am in a condition damage build, so that's one of the reasons why it doesn't do a lot of damage. If you are in a power build, this Phantasm will do a lot more, and it will also do more if the target has more conditions on it. So if I'm using the clones here to get some conditions on, instead of about 700, you can see, okay, it crits for about 1500. So not so bad. Really, with regards to the staff, I often just use this Phantasm as another piece to shatter with, and we'll see that in a build later. Now, I've given myself Chaos Armor a bunch of times using those combo fields. This is actually the skill itself on the weapon. So if I push the button, it just gives me Chaos Armor. So Chaos Armor gives me a couple random boons, and any foe that strikes me random conditions. So I can get protection, regeneration, and swiftness here, and then my enemies will get blindness, confusion, or cripple. So really it just makes it better for me and worse for you. Again, we've seen this many times. Bad for you, good for me. So Chaos Armor, it just looks like this. Now I can give myself Chaos Armor if I put down a field and then go ahead and blink out of it like that. It's pretty nice. So Chaos Armor is a good thing to have. If you can give it to yourself with any of your combo fields, it's better to have than not have. And now the creme de la creme, my favorite thing about the staff, which is Chaos Storm. So I just think it looks beautiful. I think it's amazing looking. And what it does is it actually applies random conditions to foes and boons to allies, similar to Chaos Armor and similar, in that Mesmer theme. What it also does, though, is you notice here Aegis. Aegis is something that really Guardians, for the most part, have access to, which lets the next incoming attack get blocked. Now, so that means that enemies that are inside of this get chilled, which means they move slower. They get poisoned, which means they get damaged. They get weakness, which means that they, their skills recharge slower. Or sorry, their endurance recharges slower. And then Aegis, which protects your guys. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go up to Svanir and summon Chaos Storm on my clones. So I'm going to make some clones, and then I'm going to summon Chaos Storm on top of it. And you'll see that this clone, or myself, we blocked Svanir's attack, and that clone blocked Svanir's attack as well. So what I can do here is just sort of kite, very similar to how I did with the Scepter. I can kite Svanir and then run away from him. And if I put Chaos Armor before he hits me, actually he went for one of my clones, which is fine. Basically what I can do is just keep casting and running away from him. And what you'll also see is that when Chaos Storm comes back up, I'm going to be able to use it to protect my clones. Now you can actually see even here, the Scepter even appears to be a bit of a better weapon than the staff does for getting Svanir down, and that's because of the high damage from the Scepter's blocking that the staff doesn't actually have access to. That being said, though, the clones are pulling their end, which is very helpful as well. Also, I noticed that I didn't have autocast on, which is a significant problem. So again, folks, keep autocast on. Makes killing things much easier. Overall, I think the staff is the best weapon in the game still. It lets you pull multiple mobs, and you'll see that in a demonstration later. It lets you pull multiple guys, and those multiple guys will all get Chaos Stormed, which is good. You want to try to drop Chaos Storm on you and your allies, and your opponents at the same time. So if you can get everything in Chaos Storm, that's going to be really strong. And actually, Chaos Storm is its own combo field ethereal, which gives you Chaos Armor. So there's lots of great inward synergy with the staff as well. And you can basically just do lots and lots of damage while keeping yourself reasonably protected. So that's the major thing I think about the staff, is that it allows you to stay protected while dealing out quite a lot of damage. It being my favorite weapon, I can't help but just give it an A+. It's my favorite. Well, if you managed to stick with me through the entirety of that video, I applaud you for your ability to stay awake and interested. Thank you so much for taking the time, and please leave me some feedback. Let me know what you think. The next video is going to cover the skills that Mesmers have access to, and we'll also start talking about some of the traits and ways to build your character. Then what we'll get into is applications for those traits, and that's something that we'll cover in a future video as well. So in the meantime, shoot me a message in-game. My character's name is Mr. Prometheus, and I look forward to hearing from all of you. Thanks so much.